technology is the most powerful change in the world of education. Welcome to the video interview series, Augmented Reality-based technology in the classroom, delivered to you by Clever Books Company. So, hello everyone, hello listeners, hello our friends. Today we have our fantastic guest, Vicki. Hello, Vicki.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll be talking about use of augmented reality in the classroom, and it will be fantastic to hear your opinion and maybe your practical experience as well. So feel free to share all your knowledge and also your professional opinion. We'll be glad to hear that. But at the beginning, please introduce yourself.
My name is Vicki Davis. I'm a classroom teacher in Camilla, Georgia in the United States, and I work with all ages, but every day I teach grades 8, 9, and 10. And we've done some exciting things with augmented reality, and it's a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And can you explain how you implement augmented reality-based technology and what those tools are?
Well, the main thing that we have used recently has been Metaverse. So my students have programmed in Metaverse, and they did this last fall, and they all had to write their own augmented reality experience. So what would happen is you have to look through your phone through the Metaverse app, and you can put in an object or a talking object or some kind of object that sort of kind of floats in space wherever you're looking with your phone. And then you interact with that object. So the object could ask you questions, you could respond, you could do all kinds of things. And the students did everything from a cat teaching a history lesson to talking about their favorite college mascot, to just all different kinds of things that were augmented reality. Now, obviously, it's still got a ways to go, and it does drain battery life when you do augmented reality. However, I think that augmented reality is really very much the future, because if you can think about it, every single thing around us is almost like a placeholder for a digital object. So I know that your podcast listeners are probably very understanding of augmented reality, but how I explain it to my students is that, augment means to add to. So you have your physical reality around you. You have your virtual reality, which is in cyberspace or in electronic world. And then augment means that you take digital things and you overlay them on the physical world. So you're literally augmenting or adding to physical reality. So my students and I, as we did this, we envisioned what could happen. So you could be walking down a busy New York street and look and see 6 restaurants. And through it'll probably be your contacts, your glasses. I mean, we may not even carry cell phones in another 5 or 6 years. It'll look different. And you look over the restaurants and you see the star ratings for the restaurant. You may say, okay, I'm more interested in this restaurant. And you may interact with an intelligent type. It looks like a person, but it's not really a person. You may talk to someone and say, okay, I want a table there, and would you go ahead and order my appetizers? And then when you get there, you look through your glasses, you have a virtual host who seats you, and you sit down, and then of course you would need a physical server to bring you your food. But augmented reality, a lot of people don't realize, will actually replace some jobs in the future. And so we need to understand how to interact with intelligent objects that will appear in augmented reality on our physical world. And I know that's kind of mind-blowing, but you can start with a real simple programming in something like Metaverse or playing Pokemon Go. Now, a lot of teachers love and use Erasmus, which they use for their parent presentations. So they'll have a QR code on a student object, and the parent will look through it, and then something will come alive and explain about that object. Or they'll launch a video or something like that. So there's lots of ways to use augmented reality today, but it's only a tiny little glimmer of what it's about to be.
Okay, well, that sounds absolutely fascinating. And you did mention correctly that augmented reality is the future in education. And you also pointed out that actually only a limited amount of schools and teachers and educators in general use this tool at the moment. And the interesting part that you've also mentioned that it's something that the future jobs, we don't know what's going to exist and what tools the kids need to fit those jobs. Would you agree that the augmented reality is a necessary tool for the schools to implement to teach kids to fit the 21st century requirements?
So, I don't get too hung up on individual tools because it's all about what you're trying to teach. However, we need to get our students understanding that change is part of their lives. We also need our students to understand that they must create and mash up and hack their world. They have to be able to create and change things around them. So augmented reality gives them the ability to overlay things um, on the physical world. And we want them to understand that. We want teachers to understand that. And if you think about it, the faster we understand it, the faster we'll use it. Because yes, we use textbooks, but you could be looking at a textbook and have a QR code. And then a person could sort of, you could see it through your device and they talk to you and you interact with them about the topic on that page. So your struggling students really have so much potential because they can interact. And, not everybody does well with text. Not everybody does well with videos. But augmented reality has the ability to overlay itself on the physical world. And here's the thing. It may take a little getting used to, I used to teach people how to use the internet. I remember the days where it took me an hour to teach somebody how to use a mouse. Well, you don't have to teach anybody how to use the physical world. You don't have to teach them how to pick up a pen. You don't have to teach them how to write on you teach them how to write on a piece of paper, but to interact with a piece of paper, these are all part of our physical world. And that's what makes augmented reality so very exciting and part of our future. I think we just have to be open-minded and understand that this will interact with our students in their future. So we want them to be comfortable in this space and know that, what is augmented reality and how does it work, and be familiar with it, but even better, not just use it, but make it and create it. We want our students to be inventors and creators, and we want them to be creative, because the jobs that you won't be able to get rid of will be the jobs that require creativity and collaboration and working together. And when you program an augmented reality, that gives you that. But augmented reality, like we said, also gives us a peek into the kind of jobs that will be replaced. Because if you walk into a restaurant and a virtual host can appear on your glasses and it can walk you to your table, why do you need hostesses anymore? And yeah, we're talking another 10 years out, perhaps 15 years out. But that's where we're heading, is that if something is just rote and routine in the physical world, an augmented, intelligent object of some kind will be able to replace that person. So we need to understand augmented reality, not be afraid of it. Like every change, there's victims and victors. There's winners and those who suffer. And if we want our students to be on the winning side of technology, we need them to understand how to use it, interact with it, and create with it.
Okay, gave a very good point that the students need to learn not just to interact with augmented reality, but create it. So does that mean that you would support more the way that the teachers not just use the preset scenario with certain augmented reality apps, or but rather have the applications that enable kids to actually create the augmented reality on their own? What do you think has more potential?
I always think you have more potential when you have students creating, because when students are creating, they can unlock things. So you could have a history unit and all of the students could have to program an object to teach about that history unit. Well, now you have, instead of one teacher making one thing, you have 25 kids who've made something that goes along with it. So there's always more potential when we're all creating. I do think there are times and places where we want to interact with augmented reality in a different way. So I think we need both. I think there's great potential for augmented reality as a teacher in some ways, teaching us and interacting with us, teaching us about physical world. Think about museums. I mean, why do we need a museum guide when you could have a literal person, today when we're recording this is the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination, which makes us very sad. but also inspires us very much because of his life. So what if you were at his museum and instead of a tour guide telling you about him, you actually saw some sort of image of him on your glasses when you go to the different objects. So when you see the display about the Birmingham jail, you actually see him talking about what was happening or hear him reading one of his letters. That is a much more powerful experience. It feels more firsthand. It feels more direct. So museums definitely are going to be transformed with augmented reality. But we have potential in our classrooms. We have potential with our textbooks. We have potential in so many different ways. Think of it like we have unlimited points in our physical world which could hold electronic objects that we can interact with. It's just unlimited potential, only limited by our human minds. So we need to get creating and thinking as soon as possible.
So in the sense that teachers also need to understand what they're trying to achieve within the use of augmented reality in the classroom, and depending on that, they can choose the tools.
Yes, it starts with what you're trying to teach. What you're trying to teach is first, and then you pick the tools for what you're trying to teach.
And which are the major challenges you think that teachers or educators in general now face in bringing augmented reality to schools?
We need more apps. We need more tools that do it. It does currently take battery life because it's pretty much using almost every sensor in your smartphone. Not all schools are BYOD. My school is bring your own device, BYOD. So all of my students have their phones with them, but I will say that I brought in a special charger because we would literally lose half of our battery life in a class period. So we could charge it back up. So we were constantly charging, and that's just the state of how it is today. I think it's important to think about where it's going. And I saw this when I was in the cell phone business back in the early 90s. I almost didn't get in the business because people were saying, well, who wants to carry a phone that's this big, you know, the big bag phones, and who wants to carry that? Well, the point was nobody wanted to carry that, but you have to look at technology and not where is it today, but where is it going? And battery life is getting better. Processors are getting more powerful. Our ability to do what's required for augmented reality is improving. So right now, we're at the very, very beginning of this technology, and it's heading very exciting places. I remember the day that Google Docs launched. I used it when it was Rightly, and then Google Docs launched it, and my students and I were actually in Google Docs. We tried to break it the very first day it was out, try to see, you know, we found the limit was about 25 students. And that's a story that they and I remember. I ended up talking with some of the people at Google after we used Google Docs. They were like, hey, how was your experience? And they called us actually because it was in such the early days. And I think you have such an opportunity when you can learn about things in the early days, not only to make a memory, but my students now think back as adults and say, okay, I see where this has come. I'm going to do this in my life. I'm going to learn how to be on the leading, bleeding edge of technology and figure out how to use it to make the world a better place.
And another interesting point that would be great to hear your opinion is, at the moment, from your experience, are the teachers who are encouraging to bring augmented reality technology to the classroom and trying something new, or are actually the school's principals that are encouraging teachers to look for something new and also suggesting certain technology?
Well, I'm a teacher, so I tend to connect with teachers more than I connect with principals. So my answer would be that I see teachers using it. There are amazing principals out there. I think the principals, most of them are very practical. They want results, and most of them will allow their teachers to use things that will help them get those results. And there are principals that encourage. I doubt most principals say, I want you using augmented reality. They'll probably say, I want you to be innovative. I want you to have students making and creating and using creativity. And the wise principals will let the teachers pick what works for those teachers. But I see a lot of teachers, really the leading bleeding edge of teachers who have been on the leading bleeding edge for many years are playing with it. And, you know, we have to sandbox. We have to play with technology when it first comes out. And that's still where we are. There's a long way to go with augmented reality. But of course, like I said, I see teachers doing it. But then again, most of my friends are teachers all over the world. So I guess I'm biased by my audience and my friends.
And how did you start using augmented reality? How did you learn from it? And so what did you start with as an issue?
Well, I used Erasmus many years ago, just playing with it, read about it on Twitter. I will say that the Metaverse folks actually contacted me because of my Cool Cat Teacher blog that I write. And they said, hey, we have this new tool. And they took me on a tour and I was like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. I want to use this in my classroom. And I did end up, they ran an advertising campaign for a week back in November or so, but I was using them long before that happened. That's how I found out about programming in it. We were using the Erasmus. I can't even remember how old that app is. I was trying to remember today. Is it 7 or 8 years old? It was when it first came out. We were using it, and we've used it every so often since then. Erasmus has its capabilities. Metaverse is an example of a programming tool that I think is where we're heading with being able to program and create more. Now, the next step is obviously really being able to tag GPS coordinates, because what it didn't do, I know back in the fall, is my students wanted it to be so you walked into school and you looked at the front office and then a person or a thing appeared and talked to them at the front office, and then they walked to the library and another thing appeared, and we're still working on the GPS. Plus, when you're inside a building, it's a little bit different because you're having to triangulate off Wi-Fi. So those are all things that the programmers have to work on that are coming, that will be very, very exciting. I mean, what if you have a student trophy case and somebody points their augmented reality browser at the trophy case, and you see the post-game win where everybody won and the coach gives the speech, and you actually see that in your augmented reality browser. I mean, we're being able to attach electronic objects to physical objects. It's really exciting and has unlimited potential for us.
And you've also mentioned that augmented reality apps like Erasmus, where you do your own, probably require certain technical knowledge from teachers to be able to program or at least start using it. So if the teacher has never used augmented reality app, what would be your suggestion to start with? Start with already pre-installed scenario, just to make it easy onboarding, or start with actually, digging a little bit more and understanding how the whole thing works to program and create the augmented reality?
Well, I can tell you how I learned. I went in and I played with it. I played with the things that other teachers did. You can also go on websites and find out what are the most popular things in Metaverse, or what are the most popular uses of Erasmus. There are others out there now, and there'll certainly be others before this is all over. It'll be interesting to see which is going to be the augmented reality browser. Like, what's going to be the Chrome of augmented reality? That'll be really interesting to see. But you start off by, exploring, seeing what other people are doing, and then you start playing and using it and seeing what you can create. I think it's important anytime you learn a new piece of software, and I've been talking about this for at least 15 years, is you want to sandbox, you want to play with it. You want to say, hey, this is what we can do. And that's what I talked to my students. I showed them a little bitty thing I had made, and then we made something together, and then I turned them loose and they started making these awesome objects that they list on their website. So all of my students have a personal website with their portfolio, and they have movies, and they have all kinds, they have podcasts, they have everything they've created, but they also have an augmented reality app. And that's awesome. That just gives them one more way to display their work.
That's fantastic. I mean, how great of a thing for the kids, to be able to share something that they've done on their own.
Well, you want kids to be creators and publishers, and you want them to share, and you want them to know that they matter, they're important, they're each a masterpiece. They all have something to share with the world. And I think that the classroom where you have the teacher just giving things to the students, a lot of times the students aren't receiving those things. They're just kind of sitting there and biding their time. And you want the classroom to be a place where you're creating and inventing, and the teacher is just not the center of the universe anymore. We're more like a spaceship going around all these planets, and our students are planets and asteroids. They're doing all these things. They're flying here and there. And I had a transfer student come in my classroom 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were talking before spring break got out last week, and she said, your classroom is kind of a loud, noisy place. And I said, isn't that awesome? Because I expect it to be. I want it to be a place where we're interacting, we're creating, we're doing awesome things.
That sounds very encouraging and very motivating for the students as well to be able to let go and really show their within potential.
They do. You just have to remember when you move to a making type space where whether you're making in augmented reality or anything else, that making is hard and
Mhm.
inventing is hard. And the kids will, some of them are not used to persisting on anything but video games. And so I remind them that making, creating is a lot like a video game. They don't stop playing their favorite video game when they die or when they have a problem. They persist and they try something different. And that's what we have to do in making and creating. But they're used to so many things in school. I mean, what are they shooting for? 100. Well, 100 means they've mastered it. But, that's one reason I'm not crazy about tests, because I want them in an environment where they're struggling and they're failing sometimes, and I don't want them to be penalized for failing. I want them to see failing as part of the process of innovation. So, are they going to have a completed item? Yes. I want them to have a completed augmented reality app. But is it hard getting there? Absolutely, because many kids want to quit. So I don't want teachers or administrators to think, oh, this is easy, the kids just love it and they do it. I mean, that's false. If you think that, when you implement technology, you'll stop, because the moment a kid says, this is boring, or I don't want to do this, this is boring is a defense mechanism sometimes. Sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's, I'm tuning out, I don't want to do this, this is hard, I don't understand. And you got to sit down with that student and help figure out, okay, what can we do to reignite that that engine and get them motivated again to pursue whatever it is we're pursuing.
That's a great encouragement for students as well. What do you think is actually one of the major things that augmented reality solves for kids and for teachers?
When it's fully implemented, it will, the textbooks that we use, which I know that a lot of people have moved to electronic textbooks, but particularly in science and math, they're finding the physical page is a very good thing to have. So we will be able to augment the physical page with the electronic objects that we so appreciate in ebooks. So if you could think of, it's kind of funny, we're going to go through this whole course of ebooks, and that's great. But eventually we may come back to some sort of either e-paper or true textbooks that have augmented pieces in them, and it will come full circle. So we'll have paper again, or whatever object we use, whether the paper is smart paper and it changes every so often, however that'll look. But we'll have more meaning in our classrooms when we understand it. And think about the day when a student creates an awesome project and they can literally, the textbook companies opened it up enough that my student can create something and attach it to an object in their history textbook, and then you across the world can open up your history textbook and see what my student has created. Because I think that's really the only way we're going to have enough augmented objects to truly be exciting teaching machines in some way for everyone. So I think there's a lot of potential for augmented reality, but to really spur it forward, we need to get everybody creating and playing in it, not as the only thing we do in the classroom, but as something that we can do to augment our learning and to create augmented reality.
Just to imagine that a student on one side of the world creates something and the student on the other side of the world opens a ebook and sees that, how proud it is.
Yeah.
And in terms of maybe naming 2 or 3 main benefits from for the kids learning when they use augmented reality, what would those be?
Right now, it is creating and making, I think. There are people doing augmented reality quizzes and that sort of thing. I'm always cautious when people say, oh, we have a new way to test. A test is a test is a test. Okay, so a test. I'm not going to get too super excited about a test unless it can really unleash our ability to understand projects and actual creation and true knowledge. So yeah, there are ways you can make quizzes. There's ways you can do that. But I get most excited right now with students creating and inventing, learning how to, computational thinking, how to interact and create and program. Because, I mean, Scratch is awesome. It's a good tool to start. But a lot of people say, well, what's next after Scratch? And what's next after this? Well, I think that tools like Metaverse and Erasmus let us start programming the world around us and really take us to the next step. So that is the current benefit. Now, where will it be? It will be so helpful for so many students when their textbooks, now a student has trouble in math. Well, they have to go on their device if they have a device at school, or they go home and get on their device and they'll look it up on Wolfram Alpha, or they'll go on Khan Academy and they'll try to find a video to help them. And that's all well and good for the students who have the device at home or who have the get up and go, the intrinsic motivation to go look for that. That's great. But there are a lot of students that don't have that intrinsic motivation, or they think I'm not good at math, right? So you want to hook those I'm not good at math. So if they're looking on a page and they see problem number 1, they don't have a clue where to start. If they're able to use their augmented reality to see on their glasses or see on their phone, look at that problem, and then here comes alive a person to teach that problem, or here comes alive the video on their device immediately started. Here's somebody working this problem and explaining it for me. Another teacher or somebody else, sometimes just teaching them a different way. That is incredible opportunity. I think it's hard because textbook companies don't know how to get their arms around that. And I truly think that the textbook company for the 21st century will be the one that does, like I talked about earlier, that understands that opening things up so that we can all create, we can all tag objects with augmented reality items, intelligent items, on their textbooks or whatever, that's what's going to be the most helpful in the end.
Thank you very much. And Vicki, probably the last question for today. What one advice would you give teachers who haven't used augmented reality, but they're planning to do so? What would you suggest them to start with?
So, yeah, my strategy is innovate like a turtle. That is my innovation strategy. I have a turtle here on
Sounds
my desk
great.
that actually called Kaizen. And my goal is to take a little step forward every day. So I always have my big 3. What are my next 3 things I'm going to learn how to do? So this past fall, augmented reality was on my big 3. And that's why I was looking, when I talked to the metaverse folks, I was already looking for how are we going to do something in augmented reality. So I would say when you're ready, don't try to do too much, but say, okay, what am I going to do next? How am I going to innovate like a turtle? And that's the secret of my own innovation. Is I innovate like a turtle, a little step forward every day. And remember, you don't have to know everything about something before you take students in it. Just test it out, make sure it's a safe place. If you see a lot of teachers on it, like Metaverse has a lot of teachers, okay, there's something here. You don't have to feel like you're totally blazing the trail. You are not the first person programming in augmented reality at this point. A lot of people have gone before you. So take advantage of it, learn from it, and innovate like a turtle.
Thank you very much. What a great advice. And Vicki, thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your experience and your opinion. I believe that it will encourage many teachers around the globe to be able to go and try something new and experiment in the class and add value to the kids' learning as well.
I hope so. Thank you.
And excitement and fun as well in the class.
Yeah. And they can connect with me on Twitter at CoolCatTeacher. And then I have a podcast too called The 10-Minute Teacher. And just connect and ask questions if you have any. I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Vicki.
Thank you.
Everything changes.